I am extremely pleased to be here today with you. First and foremost, the warmest congratulations to ISIS, the good ISIS, as they say here in Malaysia, for the impeccable organization of this forum, and of course, all the sponsors. I apologize that you have a double, a very imposing picture of myself to bear with. Maybe we should have put the High Representative of the European Union that I represent here as a backdrop. But it's indeed, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a huge privilege for me to address you today on a very pertinent theme, what the EU really does and what it means for the region. So I remember last year's forum very fondly, the round table. It took place a bit earlier, I think it was in June, and you gave me the opportunity then to introduce the main objectives and characteristics of the European Union's strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. The feedback that I received then, it was actually very lively, and I think this is what it helps shaping the EU policies. It was a very engaging panel, but there was a major difference. Last time it was online. I hope that was the last time, and now it's great to have such great audience and interact as you did also this morning. However, in substance, the global outlook has not become any brighter since last year when we spoke. Quite the contrary. We continue to live in times of geopolitical upheaval. Last year, the theme of the APR was sustaining cooperation among competition. You could have actually kept the same title for this year. It seems as if tension and competition were only increasing at the time, but I could even dare this year we have also signs of coercion. So ASEAN and the European Union continue to suffer from their, and I will put in brackets, respective crises, whether linked to the unresolved conflicts in Myanmar, or the tensions in the South and East China Seas, or the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I will argue today, however, that there is no such thing as respective crisis, because any crisis in a globalized world has far-reaching tentacles and directly affects everyone. When we read our respective Indo-Pacific strategies, the European, and here I'm using the word respective, the EU and ASEAN share a similar approach, namely our shared commitment to an open and inclusive Indo-Pacific cooperation and our refusal that geopolitical rivalries are allowed to overshadow the need to tackle shared challenges. From a European point of view, I would like to point out that we cannot ignore the geopolitical reality. I would characterize it by the following elements. First, the growing significance of the region for the global economy, and therefore the EU's prosperity, because they are so closely linked, what is happening in the Indo-Pacific for the EU's prosperity. Then the growing strategic and political rivalries, which are getting more acute and which play out in the region, making it a prominent playing field for global competitors and rivals. The future of the international order is largely being shaped here, in these parts of the world. It will affect our shared efforts in upholding the rules-based international order and overcoming global challenges such as climate change. Then third, a display of force and tensions in regional hotspots whether it is the South China Sea, the Taiwan Straits, which sometimes result in countries being buffeted by attempts of economic coercion, disruption of supply chains, cyber attacks, and foreign interference. So our 2021 European Union Strategy for Cooperation in the Indo-Pacific is, I would say, an affirmation of the European Union's, or an affirmation by the European Union of the region's strategic importance. And today I will consciously repeat a few facts that I mentioned to you last year. The Indo-Pacific region is the second largest destination for European Union goods. The European Union is the top foreign direct investment partner in the region. 1/3 of the global trade goes through the South China Sea, and so does 40% of the EU trade. This is why our strategy is wide-ranging, covering the areas of sustainable and inclusive prosperity, green transition, ocean governance, digital governance and partnerships, connectivity, security and defense, and human security. More importantly, it is inclusive for all partners who wish to cooperate with us. This element of inclusivity is a major commonality when we compare the ASEAN outlook for the Indo-Pacific and the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy. So in addition to the strategy, main elements of which I just mentioned, I shall mention also the new policy of 2022, the European Union Strategic Compass, which guides our security and defense policy. It recognizes the global competition and geopolitical tensions in the region, but also the need to collaborate with the region, and it puts very much ASEAN and its centrality at the forefront. In the European Union, sometimes it takes, as alas we know well, a crisis for us to integrate further. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is certainly an example of that. As European Union today, we are doing things in security and defense that I would have considered impossible only 2 years ago. For example, the European Union's peace facility aims at sending weapons to a country under attack. This has never happened before, and we have mobilized 40 billion euros for this. So we have learned, or we had to learn the hard way. But in the European Union, we are moving and we are adapting very fast. The conclusion that we have drawn from these two EU strategies is threefold. First, that the European Union cannot separate economics from security. Second, that we now live in one geostrategic theater so that European security and the security of the Indo-Pacific are interwoven, and so as is our prosperity. Third, that the European Union must reinforce its presence and strengthen its engagement in and within the Indo-Pacific. As the High Representative Borrell often says, there is no far away in a globalized world. Therefore, we see partnership and inclusive cooperation at the heart of our approach to the Indo-Pacific. It is why our trade agreements, our digital and green partnerships are not merely sectoral or economic measures, but important means to strengthen stability, security, and rules-based international order. This forms part of our distinctive role in and offer to the Indo-Pacific partners under the Global Gateway Initiative, which was launched in December 2021, and I remember I had the chance to do it firstly in ISIS, 6 December, just one day after its adoption. Our offer, so the Global Gateway Initiative, it is our offer to help build diversified and secured supply chains and to unlock sustainable investments in partner countries. I would like to emphasize that the Indo-Pacific countries can find in the EU a trusted partner, willing to contribute to the stability and prosperity of the region and its people. A partner with principled and long-term engagement. Principled because our cooperation is not designed as self-serving. It also serves the priorities owned but also driven by partner countries. And long-term because our ambition to the Indo-Pacific will not suffer due to our focus now, unfortunately, to the Russian war against Ukraine. Because, of course, we cannot consider that just as a European war, because its consequences affect us all. So what does it mean to the region, all this proliferation of European policies, and to ASEAN in particular? First of all, I have to say that we very much welcome Indonesia's work recently, and we see that is organizing very important side meetings, especially under this under Indonesia's chairmanship this year. And I'm looking forward to see what will be the planned events this autumn. The ones planned on the margins of the ASEAN summit in September, in particular, might offer the opportunity to define more cooperation between the European Union and ASEAN in the context of our respective Indo-Pacific strategies. In 2025, as we all know, Malaysia will take over as ASEAN chair, so together with the ambassadors from the EU member states that I welcome today here, we will engage at very early stage with Wisma Putra to discuss what we can do together to address critical challenges and the rising tensions. Some of you also may remember that a year ago at the 35th APR, I said that our Indo-Pacific strategy was about concrete action and not rhetoric. Very often the European Union has been accused that it is about an organization that says a lot but does not walk the talk. And now we believe with all the new policies that we have, we are indeed walking the talk. So what has happened very recently, in December last year, the European Union has signed the partnership and cooperation agreements with Malaysia and Thailand. The conclusion of the negotiation of the free trade agreements with New Zealand, and I salute a good friend, Simon Draper, here today. Actually, I was in New Zealand when we started first talking about the FTA, and I'm very pleased that it has happened. We have ongoing negotiations, of course, with Australia. We have resumed the negotiation of free trade agreements with India. Also, free trade negotiations have been relaunched with Thailand, and they are ongoing and intensifying negotiations with other Indo-Pacific partners, which include Indonesia and Kenya. Philippines will be next, announced by the President of the European Commission at her recent visit to Manila, Ursula von der Leyen. And I hope Malaysia is next as well. We'll follow soon. We are working on that. So last year also, we established digital partnerships with Japan, the Republic of Korea, and Singapore. And in October, and this is a major breakthrough, we signed the EU-ASEAN Comprehensive Air Transport Agreement, which is a major achievement for the connectivity among us. It's the first block-to-block air liberalization agreement worldwide, which will open many new commercial opportunities for our companies, and that's expanding our trade and people-to-people contacts. Connectivity is not just a key word. It's a strategic concept. That is why, and as mentioned before, we launched the European Union's Global Gateway, which is a plan to boost the European Union's engagement in the region and provide strategic investment in the development of infrastructure, among others. We have launched about 20 Global Gateway priority projects, which will be implemented across the Indo-Pacific region, and those concern from hydropower and solar energy plants to transport infrastructure. ASEAN is, of course, central to our work on green transition and connectivity, where the EU stands ready to support ASEAN through the recent adopted Green Team Europe initiative and the Team Europe initiative on sustainable connectivity. At the Global Gateway Forum in Brussels in October this year, we aim to have important announcements with regard to the 10 billion euros pledged for ASEAN at the EU-ASEAN Commemorative Summit last December. Besides, the European Union is also contributing to the regional security of the Indo-Pacific. We have a naval operation known as Atalanta, which is now covering a larger spectrum of tasks in a much larger theater. It was initially conceived to fight piracy in the coast of Somalia, but now it has developed into a maritime security provider along with the African coast and beyond. We have conducted successful joint naval exercises in the Indo-Pacific partners, with Indo-Pacific partners as Djibouti, India, Indonesia, Japan, Republic of Korea, Oman, and most recently the United States. We are developing what we call a coordinated maritime presence in the northwestern Indian Ocean to optimize the use of assets that the EU member states are deploying in the region. So I'm very glad to see that our partners are having increased expectation from the European Union in the security field, one of the 7 priorities of our Indo-Pacific strategy. We are also very active on maritime security, very important for this part of the world, primarily through our what we call CRIMARIO project, which supports regional partners in better covering the respective maritime spaces. CRIMARIO has developed a tool which is called IORIS. It's a maritime domain awareness system, which is facing growing success and is used by 33 countries, including Indonesia and the Philippines and 10 regional organizations. We are now reaching out to the Pacific partners so they can consider this offer, which is interoperable with other systems, and they can plan like that they can have a very good tool in their hands for the way ahead. Malaysia has recently become a partner country in another regional project. It's called ESIVA, Enhancing Security in and with Asia. I'm happy to share today with you that the initial reception has been very positive and the first joint activities in areas such as cybersecurity or preventing violent extremism have been highly successful. This brings me back to my initial comments about the current geopolitical upheaval. I have mentioned that Europe and Asia have a direct stake in each other's security and that we have to work together in order to avoid confrontation in the region. Our economic links continue to increase. Every day, a stunning 2,000 vessels, ships, transport goods across the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea to Europe and back. However, at the same time, our security landscape is becoming more and more dangerous. I have mentioned that enough times, but what is happening is that there is less trust among the main players, less respect for international law and multilateral agreements, and force and coercion are on the rise. So we are living in times that everything can be weaponized. And it is not law but force which is increasingly shaping our world. So against such backdrop, Unsurprisingly, all major players are expanding their military spending. And why? Because nations and people feel insecure. They are afraid because they face challenges, and since they face challenges, they buy arms, and this is illustrated by this course of global rearmament very, very clearly. I will share some statistics with you, which they are quite significant. The world military spending last year grew to an all-time high, reaching $2.2 trillion US dollars. Is it because Russia's war in Ukraine? Yes, definitely, it has an effect. Just to give you the example, the European Union's military expenditure is today 30% higher than it was in 2013. And that is the year before the military annexation, Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea. But nonetheless, here in Asia, your military expenditure is even greater. So according to our Eurostat statistics, last year, the military expenditure in Asia and Oceania was 45% higher than in 2013. So therefore, we see that in 10 years, our regions have increased their military spending by 30 and 45%, which shows clearly that we live in a dangerous and uncertain world. And that brings me to the end, because the title of this year's APR is An Age of Strategic Uncertainty. So we cannot stand passively and observe how the age of a strategic uncertainty unfolds, to quote the title of this year's APR. And this is not an option. We need new, trusted partnerships, we need solutions, we need commitment to manage the repercussions of strategic uncertainty. We need to join efforts to fight against the scourge of disinformation and misinformation and the daily cyber threats that we are all subject to. We need to help collectively our societies fathom that our prosperity is in danger and that we need to overcome past misconceptions to face the challenges that lie ahead. As the great Athenian historian Thucydides said, knowledge without understanding and courage is useless. This ballroom today is full of knowledge, but also understanding and courage. And I believe that these fantastic events you are already trying to shaping us, and it can be used as a starting point of finding solutions and remedies. So for me, it has been really a real pleasure to update you on the EU's, I would call it, sturdy commitment to be part of inclusive solutions for the region. And thank you very much for listening to me, and I will not delay your meal any longer. Thank you.